Joining us now is Congressman Matt Rosendale. He represents Montana's 2nd Congressional District, and he's on the phone. Congressman, good to talk to you, sir.
Vince, it's great to be on with you again.
Was this bill everything you hoped for and more?
Oh, my gosh. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandra Mayorkas, who is currently getting ready to be impeached, came out and said, this is a good piece of legislation. That should tell everybody everything that they need to know about this legislation.
Yes. I got the impression that he was involved in drafting it, actually, because he did an interview, I think it was with the New York Times last week, and he was talking about some of the behind-the-scenes negotiating going on. My understanding was he was a part of it. Were you a part of it, Congressman?
No. And if he wasn't, I think the drug cartels themselves must have been, because this is absolutely insane. They want to put into statute, Vince, a minimal, somewhere 4,000 to 5,000, depending upon exactly how you're going to measure this, but 4,000 to 5,000 illegals a day allowed into our country before triggers start keeping Homeland Security, CBP, from being able to utilize their powers to keep folks out. That's just one of the provisions. It's going to expand visas by about 60,000 a year. It's going to expand, listen to this one. We had 100,000 illegals, refugees coming from Afghanistan, 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. They were distributed across 3 military bases. They were granted parolee status. They were not vetted. Somewhere along the line, these people have been released into our country. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they are. But this piece of legislation would grant them an additional 10,000 visas to bring family members in. So if we've got people that are here that are already looking to do harm to our country, why don't we just go ahead and let them invite their family members in to see if they can help out? The contents of this legislation are absolutely crazy. It's terrible, and I'm glad to see that leadership in the House has said this will never be brought to the floor.
Yeah, and rightfully so. But I do think it's worth dwelling on some of the wish list items that the left and certainly the Republicans who are going along with them are pursuing. So one thing the bunch stands out to me, but one is that it would concentrate all of the legal disputes involving illegal immigrants in the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. It would take away the power of all the other federal courts and vest it into the D.C. Circuit Court, which is like a very left-wing and destructive court. This seems to me like a very obvious way to try and undermine immigration enforcement in a future Trump administration, sir.
That's exactly what all of this is about, Now, not the spending provision. So they're trying to get an additional $60 billion for Ukraine. They're trying to sprinkle that throughout this, but you're right. They're trying to put some provisions in statute that are going to keep the next Trump administration, which I think we all can agree is going to be taking place, so that his hands end up being tied. They saw what he was able to do to stop this invasion on our southern border, and they're trying to put additional provisions back into statute that would keep him from sealing our border up again.
Another piece is that apparently the bill makes it so that DHS officials, bureaucrats, will be able to render judgments about who gets asylum and who doesn't without going through the immigration court at all. J.D. Vance points this out today and says that it's, quote, perhaps the worst provision of the bill.
I agree. And then you turn over additional authorities to Secretary of Homeland Security, again, Mayorkas, who's currently going through this impeachment process to make determinations about when we're going to have to implement this increased security, grants him an additional access to somewhere between 350, I think, and $450 million of funds that he would have the ability to direct around. Meanwhile, it was going to spend about, $900 million, not on securing our border, Vince, but on building shelters at the southern border. And all that is going to do is incentivize even more people to come to the border. I'm telling you, the cartels, must have had a hand in this, and this demonstrates. Chuck Schumer came out and Mitch McConnell came out. They rolled this thing. Mitch McConnell says he has never worked so closely with Chuck Schumer to pass legislation. So this is the time for the Senate to ask themselves, is Mitch McConnell truly able to be the leader of the Republican conference in the United States Senate?
So,
time for a change.
Some of these Republicans, whether it's Langford or Romney or Mike Rounds, these Republican senators, over the past week, they've been pushing this bill, and they've been angry that anybody's been critical of them without you haven't even seen the bill. How can you be critical? And, of course, well, why didn't you release the text until the last minute again? But the defenses that they're mustering include blaming Trump. They say that Trump wants the chaos to continue. That Mitt Romney made it pretty clear that he thinks Trump is just doing this because he likes the politics of it and doesn't want the crisis solved until after the election. This is wild to hear from these Republicans. Do you get the sense that they would rather have a Biden presidency?
Oh, I have said many times over, okay, that Mitch McConnell doesn't care whether he's the majority leader or the minority leader. He just wants to be the leader of the Republicans. However many of them there are in the United States Senate, he just wants to be able to have that power. And then that is the definition, my friend, of the uniparty. You've got Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell working together. They don't care which one has the majority leader title. They don't care which one has the minority leader title, as long as it's those two guys at the top of the food chain trying to control everything that happens in that chamber. We've got to make changes. Mitch McConnell needs to be replaced.
Right, but when it comes to Trump, he has expectations, and Mitch McConnell doesn't meet them. Trump expresses his dissatisfaction and drives McConnell crazy. Seems like McConnell gets along great with Biden.
Right, and so if you're going to hope to have a Trump administration that is as effective as possible, okay, that we can continue to pursue the policies that we saw under the last Trump administration, Mitch has got to go. Mitch McConnell, and anyone that he brings in, make sure we're real clear on that. Him and anyone that he brings in, his yes people are not going to support the Trump agenda.
Yeah, it's a big problem. So I take it, based on all of this, that you're not going to be going to Mitch McConnell for money for your Senate campaign, right?
I think Mitch McConnell decided several years ago that Matt Rosendale is not the kind of guy that he wants to see in the United States Senate. I spent last weekend traveling around the state with Matt Gaetz, and we did a bunch of events. Every single event we had was oversold, okay, shoulder to shoulder, people standing there giving support, and it was fundraisers, and we called it the Truth Tour. We were out telling people, here's what's really going on in the United States House of Representatives, and here's what you can expect going forward as we do that. And Matt was very, very clear with everybody that he had ulterior motives in traveling around the state with me. He was still out there trying to rally the support and convince me to fall for this United States Senate seat. So we're getting much closer to making our final decision, Vince,
okay.
I will tell you.
If you do that, do you think you'll get a full-throated Trump endorsement?
One never knows. I certainly would be honored to have the president's endorsement, as I have always stood by him and his policies.
Yeah.
So,
We'll see. We'll see. So what's the timeline for an announcement, do you think, on something like that?
So the Secretary of State in Montana does not close the window until March the 11th, but we'll certainly have our decision made before that.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll be looking for that. In the meantime, this bill just is maddening, Congressman. And I'm glad to hear it's dead on arrival in the House. Do you get the sense that the House is pretty unified on this?
I think so. When we see that Speaker Johnson, the Majority Leader Scalise have come out, many of our members have. So a very, very broad spectrum, if you will, of the Republican conference has already come out and condemned it. Look, Ray Charles can see the problems with this bill. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. He definitely could. All right, Congressman Matt Rosendale, it is always so nice to have you on. I really appreciate your time today and your assessment of what's going on inside the halls of Congress. Thank you, sir.